Hello and welcome back to another Rush Duel Links deck profile. Today we're playing a deck that I went into thinking it was going to perform extraordinarily badly, which is why we actually called the deck Gear Suck. But it actually did surprise us quite a lot. This deck actually did reasonably well. Now, I don't want to oversell it. This deck is not performing outrageously well. It's not just beating every other deck. It did have its fair share of losses, but the deck did, in my opinion, overperform. The first things first, we'll take a look at the skill, Dark Giastrike. So this skill can be used if all the monsters with 1300 or more attack in your deck are dragon type monsters and your deck contains at most one light attribute level 6 or higher monster. That basically means you can only play one copy of Miragias, everything else has to be dragons that is above a certain attack. During the turn you have normal summoned, and this is also very important because there are specific ways to special summon these monsters. This only works when we normal summon them. Illusion Strike Dragon Miragias or Steel Striking Dragon Miragias, we can choose one dark attribute monster with 2500 attack from our deck and add it to our hand. So that's going to again be a second copy of either the Illusion Strike or Steel Strike Dragons or vice versa. And notably, we can only add it from our deck to our hand, which can get a little bit annoying. I would like this skill to add from graveyard as well, but it is what it is. Until the end of your next turn, the battle damage inflicted to your opponent by your level 7 dark attribute monsters is halved. So the damage inflicted by Illusion Strike Dragon Miragias and Steel Strike Dragon Miragias are both halved. So that is quite a steep negative, especially since it lasts until the end of your next turn. So not just this turn, but your next turn as well, you're still doing half damage, which does really suck. That is a really, really harsh restriction. I do understand why, because Miragias is a little bit busted if it gets to do whatever it wants to, as you'll see in the replays. But let's talk about our boss monsters. The first one, Miragias. This is our brand new boss. We can send one level 7 or higher dragon type monster from our hand to the graveyard, up to 2 face up level 7 or lower monsters on your opponent's field lose 1500 attack until the end of this turn. That's pretty good. We can take 3000 attack damage off of the opponent's board. This turn, if this card destroyed a monster by battle, it can make a second attack on a monster during that battle phase. So again, if we don't use our skill and we use this effect, we can effectively reduce 2 of our opponent's monsters down by 1500 attack each. So let's assume that both of our opponent's monsters are 1500 vanillas. We can reduce them down to 0 attack over both of them, and then get in for 5000 direct damage. And now you probably are starting to see why our skill halves the damage we deal, because this is just such a powerful OTK tool. Now, notably, we can't actually activate this effect if our opponent doesn't have any face-up monsters, which means we can't even gain the ability to just clear 2 monsters with this card unless they have a face-up monster. That's very, very important. And again, the biggest weakness is this only works on level 7 and lower monsters, so level 8 and higher monsters are unaffected, and unfortunately, there are quite a lot of decks in the meta currently that are level 8. We look at Attribute Hydron, we look at any maximums, that means that Cyberse are kind of out of the way, all of the Aqua bosses are level 8, Blue Eyes White Dragon and the new Wilhelm Monarch are also level 8, so there are a lot of 8s running around right now, and that does make Miragias feel a little bit underwhelming. Next up, we have Steel Strike Dragon Miragias. So we can send level 7 or higher dragon type monsters from our hand to the graveyard. That's a very familiar requirement. This turn, this card cannot be destroyed by battle or your opponent's trap card effects. Also, if this card attacked a monster, it can make a second attack on a monster during that battle phase. So notably, we can use this one, even if our opponent has face down cards, and the ability to trade into other 25s is actually very, very important. Against Blue Eyes White Dragon especially, we were able to use Miragias to clear boards of double Bright Dragon, which is very, very important. So do not underestimate Miragias. And even if Miragias wasn't restricted, we would probably still be playing 3 and 2 split anyway, just because Miragias is a lot more useful in this current meta than Miragias. And then we have our one of Dragias. We shouldn't really have to explain this card. It's really good. It can attack directly after clearing monsters, which none of the other Geas cards can do, which is really, really powerful. Next up, we have Rising Light Angel Essel, and we're probably sick of hearing me talk about this card, but this card is still really, really good. Fill up the graveyard, special summon monsters, and we have a lot of monsters that can attack twice. Now, more specifically, if we get Dragias off of the effect of Essel, that is fantastic. Dragias is probably the best card in the game to get off of Essel, because on turn 2, we can ideally get in for that 2500 direct. If we do get Miragias, we will have to use its effect to be able to attack twice, which does mean getting rid of another level 7. And Dark Giastrike, again, will not be able to activate because it's been special summoned by the effect of Essel and not normal summon, so we'd have to just naturally have another level 7 in hand in order to get this effect off, in order to get some of that turn 2 damage in. Next up, Siesta Torero. Again, a very important tool. We can flip cards face down, but we can also take cards from our graveyard and put them back into our deck. This can be especially important with a deck like this, where we are searching out a lot of our level 7 monsters using our skill, so we're going to want to put them back into our deck so we can continue to draw and search into them later on in the game. Then Boltricorn, again, fantastic staple monster. Being able to turn off our opponent's back row can be integral. Now, there will be some situations where we just can't use Boltricorn, and that is fine, but occasionally we will get to turn off one of those back row, pop one of the others, and then just be able to attack basically for free. But it's such a good card, and Boltricorn, again, should be in any list that can run it. Then we're on the Slugger and Pitcher Sports Dragon engine, and this is because, again, this locks us out of attacking with level 6 and lowers, which does kind of suck, but for the most part, we want to be attacking with our big level 7s anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. And when we're running such a large number of high-level monsters, we do want ways to help them get onto the board, and a summon engine is one of those fantastic ways to do so. Then we have 2 Dragorite. This is basically in here just because these 2 slots are kind of free, and we just wanted extra dragons for Dragon's Inferno. There's not really much of a reason why this is in here. This could basically be swapped out for anything, but sometimes having a 1500 meter is quite nice. Then we're on 7 Shift, and we went for 7 Shift because, again, we're playing 6 level 7 monsters, and we'll be shuffling a lot of them back into our deck using things like Talismanic Sealerate and using Siesta Torero. Being able to cheat them out can be helpful. But again, this does not play very well with Dark Giastrike because the monster is special summoned, which means we won't get to use our skill on that monster. Next up, Tribute to the Doomed. Obviously, one of the best legend cards in the game. It's very, very important to be able to out-maximum monsters, and this is one of the best ways to do so, as well as just defense monsters, and like we always say, everything else. Then we have our 3 Dragon's Inferno, pops back row. Popping back row is always good. Then we have 2 Talismanic Sealerate. Again, we do need quite a large number of these combined with our Tribute to the Doomed, as these are our only way to out-maximum monsters, as well as just weakening monsters, and putting cards back into a deck is always going to be really, really powerful. So this is probably just going to be a staple in most decks going forward. Then we have Negate Attack, because again, we are allowed to, we're not playing any of the limit 2s. And then finally Buffered Slime, because again, it's basically a staple. There's a lot of cards in here which you're probably hearing us say, yeah, this is a staple, you need to include this. And that's just because there are a lot of these cards right now which are auto-includes. They are just that good. So, what do we think of this deck overall? Like we said at the start, this deck has been overperforming. We expected this deck to be utter garbage, and in actual fact, it's been performing reasonably well. It turns out, just being able to attack multiple times with these monsters is pretty good. A lot of the time we found ourselves summoning out our Miragias, using our skill to grab a monster to hand, discard it for the Miragias effect, clear 2 monsters, and then attack directly with something else. Whether that was a big beefy monster or a weaker monster such as a Dragorite, but we still managed to get that damage in, and that damage all does accumulate. One of the really cute combos we could do with this is reduce our opponent's monster's attack using Miragias after using our skill, and then attacking over the 2 weakened monsters with Dragias. Because Dragias' damage is not halved because it is a light monster. So we can still get full damage in over 2 weakened monsters as if we hadn't used our skill, which is really cool and can close out games sometimes. But like we also said, this deck is very poor against a lot of decks. Any deck that is a level 8 centric deck basically has a really good advantage against us. Now, we don't just automatically lose against them. As we've spoken about before, if our opponent summons out 25s, we can get over them with Miragias. Just crashing into them with a monster that can't be killed with battle is really, really strong. But we did notice that when we went against Blue Eyes, if they actually managed to summon the Blue Eyes White Dragon, it was basically a maximum monster. Because it's level 8, we can't weaken it with Miragias, and its defense power is high enough. If we change it to defense mode, we can't attack over it. So we basically had to find Tribute to the Doomed or Talismanic Sealerate to be able to out a Blue Eyes White Dragon, which again is not really where we want to be. Ideally, we want to have more ways to out a simple Blue Eyes, let alone a giant maximum monster. But let's jump into some replays so I can show what I've been talking about.
ラッシュデュエル。ラッシュデュエル。ラッシュデュエル。 デュエル